Hey there, it's Robert at the Samplist, and today we'll be checking out Brass Swells Pro by Sonixinema. Brass Swells Pro is a beautifully recorded library focused on brass crescendos and swells. It features 5 articulations with 5 different swell lengths. It's a very easy to use and tweak library offering a wide range of textures, making it a versatile library for your template. What really shines for me is the fact that it has very smooth legatos. At the time of this recording, Brass Swells Pro is on sale for £119. The size of the library is only 4.99 gigs and can be run on the free Contact player. In this video, we'll be going through some of the presets of Brass Swells Pro, do an overview of the library, and a composition where we'll hear this beautiful and epic brass library in context. I'm looking forward to going through this with you, so let's go. Before we start diving into the overview, I do need to state that while the library was provided to us by Sonixinema at no charge, they are in no way influencing my thoughts and opinions on the library, and the developer has had no input or previous visibility into the video before we put it out. With that being said, let's continue. Alright, so I have Sonixinema's Brass Swells open here. It's a beautiful sounding library, so let's get right to it. What I plan on doing is going through a number of these, or I should say all of these articulations. And I'll pop in here and there to say what I'm thinking or pointing anything out. I will also be toggling here and switching up the length of the swell. And you'll also hear me hear the change when I go from retongue to note tongue. So what happens here is with the retongue, there's going to be a tonguing of another note in between the swell. So, sorry, that was hard to say. So when I take out the tonguing here, so note tongue, it's just going to play the whole swell straight through, no tonguing in between. So it's not like, so in this case, without the tongue, it'll be 2 whole notes tied. With retongue, it's 1 whole note by another whole note. And then as I go along here, I will mess around with that. And I might mess around with things here like the sub bass and whatnot. So let's get right into it. So you just heard a combination of the normal and the loud articulations, and you'll see me doing that here and there as well. So you have singles here, which will just have each articulation on its own, and then they have pairs. And so I'm going to do singles and pairs. So So you get to hear a bit of everything here. Also, at some point, I will also do huge space, maybe gator, which we'll get to as we go along here. The air is a pretty good articulation to have if you want to have some nice high end, or hence air, in there. You can even make some cool breathing effects or transitions. I really like how mute and normal sound together, as well as normal and loud. And if you want some cool stuff going on in between, you can have the pulse layered with any of these to make something interesting, something different. I'll also now place some of these with the sub, and I will mess around with the proximity as well, so you can hear how that sounds. Because with the proximity, we're going further back or more forward in the mix. So that's sounding cool. Now let's check out how this sounds with the gloss and the blur. So this is the high, more like a high pass, and this is more like a low pass. You can get some really cool types of sounds and textures there. So if you hear a sample cutting off abruptly, that's me laying off the keys very quickly. If you want it to be less so, and when you let go of the keys, you could probably just bring up the release a lot more. For me, I just wanted to go through the different settings here, so that's why that's happening. So next, let us just have a listen now. Lower that to how this will sound with the huge space. That does sound huge. And then with the gator, which is just with the gator on, this can make for a lot of nice, interesting sounds, which you'll hear in the designed section. It's a cool function to have. So speaking of the designed section, let's have a listen to some of these. And the gators here are really cool sounding. Pretty airy. But this actually does lead to something which I should mention before I forget. So back to the singles here. So let's go back here to normal. So the difference between the legatos and the non-legatos are that, let's say I play just the swell here. If you want to play another note during the swell, if you have it just without the legato, then it will do its own swell when you change the pitch. So just have a listen here. So when you change the pitch, it's doing a new swell. As opposed to the legato here, I'm going to do the same thing, but you're going to hear the pitch change happen within the swell. Something I almost forgot to mention. It's a really good thing to have if you want the notes, the lead passage, the lead line to be independent and have its own type of swell setup, then don't do legato. But if you want the change in pitch to be within the swell, it's best to have the legato. Needed to make sure I mention that because that's pretty important. So back to our designed area. Let's check out a gator. I love the gators that they've done. I think they could be very useful for some tension or for some underscory type things, or just there's probably a lot of different uses really. So let's listen to the other designs, just a few of them. That last one really pushed, huh? Pushed the volume and everything, especially with the bit crusher here, the degrader. There's a lot of cool different design sounds there. So if you get this library, which I recommend getting, I really do here, check a lot of those out and you can find some inspiration to make your own sounds. I know I'm going to make my own sounds at some point using all these different things here and making some wide, large swell setups. So now let's listen to a few of the high quality, the HQ sounds. To me, these sound a little more hi-fi, more clean. So for me, I would like, if anything, I would combine probably articulation from here and then combine it with one of the singles that isn't part of the HQ section to have a nice mix of both. So let's have a listen to a few of these. I'm going to pair some up too. So something I would try doing probably after looking through this and seeing that the EQ is the same, I was very curious. I went under the hood here and there's something about this that just sounds really nice and clean. And this has some more natural sound to it. So what I would do is take something from here, which is from the HQ side, and combine it with something from the non-HQ side. Because for some reason, this has some more of that natural feel. This has a little more hi-fi, and just combine them to have a nice setup, a nice tone. So yeah, that does it for this section. Next, we'll go over the UI. All right, so let's just check out the UI for Brass Swells over here. It's really simple and straightforward, which to me makes it a very great library to have in your arsenal. So first we have these 5 slots here where you can have articulations here. We have all the articulations laid out already. You can turn each one on and off with this, or you can use key switches. You have your levels here, your volume more or less. Then you have your panning here. So you could have different articulations in different parts of the stereo field. In the top right, you have a menu here where you can have the retongue on or have no tonguing in between the swells. And then you have your choice of articulations here. So something that you could do is have normal, normal, right and left to have possibly a bigger, wider sound. Let's hear how that sounds. It's pretty wide, which is nice to have. Next, after all this, we have our slider over here for the length of the swell. So you can go from 1/2 bar to 4 bars. which is really nice. And when you change the length, you'll see that there is a loading bar at the top around here. And it loads pretty quickly. If there's a moment when you change the length and it just stays stuck in the loading bar, all you have to do is just change the move the slider a little bit and set it back to where you want it to be, and then it should reset easily. That happened to me once, and I noticed that's an easy way to just push it along. So over here we have our global settings here. For the proximity, it'll affect the mix over here. So I'll just go over here, same slider here. It affects the mic positions more or less. And if you want, you can make your own setup for the mic positions. You can solo and mute mic positions. You have the stereo with here. You can also auto purge samples by the looks of it. Look at that. And then you have your mix over here, which could just have a mix of everything. You could really mess with the mix as a whole here. Next, let's go back here. We have our expression, which is tied to the expression, your dynamics, which is tied to the mod wheel. So you can really change with the dynamics, you can change how much of a swell you really have. And then with the expression, the general volume of the whole mix here. Gloss and blur are really cool. So with gloss, it's more of a high pass filter. And with blur, it's more of a low pass filter. So let's hear how that sounds. You can really play around with that to get some nice types of sounds and textures. And then here is the sub bass. So you could change the sub bass between dirty and clean. I prefer the clean most of the time, but a dirty can help cut through a little more. I'll just keep that up there. Next, we have the reverb here. You can choose the reverb type, which is nice, the size, the amount, the pre-delay. The reverb actually works pretty well. I like the sound of this library through the reverb. You have your degrader, which is kind of more like a bit crusher. And you have your delay, and you can sync it with the tempo you have. You got your EQ. And you have your ADSR. Pretty standard stuff, very easy. I like how it's all laid out nicely here, the level of the notch that you're using and whatnot you can change. And then you have the frequency you're affecting and the size of the notch here. Very nice. Next, let us go to the mapping. So the mapping is really cool because you can have multiple articulations going. Let's change that to loud. So you have multiple articulations going in various parts of the keyboard. Let's just hear how that goes. Also, I still have this all panned out pretty wide. But you could hear each layer playing in different parts of the keyboard. It's pretty good to have that if you want to have everything in one track, 3 different layers, and you know they're going to be set to certain ranges. And then you can have them in whatever part of the stereo field you want it in. Next is the gator. And you heard it from some of the design patches when I just went to the gator itself. There's a lot of nice settings here. You can change the rhythm. You can change the length of each rhythm. And then you can change the volume overall of the whole thing. You can change each one individually. You can add some swing into that. And you could change how each, I guess, section is being attacked. Then you have the randomizer here, which is really cool. I really think I'll use this a lot. Then you have the direction of the sequence, or the gator. I like the name. Then you can shift things around, which is a nice thing to have. And if you don't like it, you can reset it, clear it, or if you really like what you did, you can save it. And there seems to be a lot of slots to use. So if you feel very creative, just come over here and mess around. You might make some pretty cool sequences here. Let's turn that off. And now, for me, something that's nice to have, a little info screen here. So you know where it's recorded, who worked on it. Got your credits here, which I like. And then the tech specs here. So you know what, if you're curious, you know, you see the console used, preamps, mics. It's really nice. But yeah, that does it for the UI. So I'm going to play something with like the panning and whatnot. Let's say you want something crazy and wide. I'm just going to get this set up here. If that, great. And then we'll have a normal right down the middle. Sub is up. Let's see how this sounds. I almost forgot something. The mapping. Turn that off. Let's see if that lets me do what I'm trying to do here. So yeah, you get this really nice wide setup. Though normally I'd probably just do that. But if you want like brass all around, as if it's like, say it's in the rafters, like left, right, center, just bearing down on the swells, then that's a cool idea to have. I might try to do something like that myself at some point and save it. Just so that way, if I want this epic swell, you can do that. Have more reverb, bring up the sub, put the proximity either forward if you want it in your face or further back. If you want it to sound more ambient. There's a lot of different ideas you can have here. I really like this setup for the UI. It's very easy, very quick to get things set up. And if you're working as like an assistant and whatnot, if you need those swells, this is quick. Super easy. You'll get stuff done pretty quickly here. So yeah, that does it for the UI. The UI is very great. I really like how easy this is for someone like me who can take a while to learn some things. So yeah, the next section is going to be the composition, where I keep things very simple with the usage of the library. I hope you like it. So my final thoughts for Brass Swells Pro is that it's a library that should be in every template. If you're writing for brass, this is something you should have. Yes, there are brass libraries that have swell patches, but I doubt they're going to be as versatile. You're gonna have a pulse, or the muted swells, or a nice air swell, or the ability to have multiple louds, or layer the mute with the loud or normal and have it pan in different ways. I think having all that control in one patch and one track makes it something that you should have. And I'm going to be using it a lot, especially if I want to have this huge, wide type of sound for epic swells or some cool transitions with the swells. So yeah, that's it. Please like this video and please subscribe to the Samplist channel. We do our best to go through these sample areas and really get in depth with them. And please comment below what you think of the library, how you would use the library, and all. I try to read the comments and respond to them as best as I can, because I know that everyone just wants to know how these libraries work and how they sound before they get them, and it's important. So by all means, ask questions, leave critique and whatnot. So yeah, happy writing, everyone.